Hey guys, it's Carmen here from Urban Farm School. One of the most popular topics that we cover in the Verge permaculture course is, is building fertility and maintaining ecological systems by, following nature's patterns. And one of those patterns, of course, is, how to maintain high levels of nutrients and not breaking the nutrient cycle. So, of course, in our perennial systems, we have strategies that allow those resources to stay in place, right? We allow the biomass to fall from the trees and the shrubs and so on and stay in place. However, in our annual vegetable gardens, there's an extra step that has to be involved because we're always taking products off of our soil level, right, off of our gardens and removing those for either our own consumption, whatever, but that fertility is not necessarily getting returned to the soil on its own. So the extra step where we are participants in that process is composting. So there are so many ways of composting, and we love all of them because they help return fertility to the soil and keep that nutrient cycle humming. However, there are a few strategies that I think in an urban environment, and particularly in a cold climate environment, work really well for us. So there are two kinds of main composting strategies that we use here on our property. One is a passive composting system, and that basically involves taking a composting bin like this and putting inputs in as they become available over a long period of time. It's like the lazy man's way of composting. In fact, I used to be the world's laziest composter. I had 5 massive compost bins here in the back alley, and by the time year 4 came around, my bin that I started in year 1 was ready to go. So it's a slow process when you use a passive system. Basically, you're allowing, it's a system that mostly functions like a natural forest would. It happens over time. And that's all well and good. But when we're needing fertility, constant inputs in our annual vegetable gardens, we kind of need a quicker return. So I'm not saying that passive piles are not effective. They are incredibly effective. But one thing you will notice with a passive pile is that when you start, you might end up with a pile that overflows your bin. You say, okay, the bin is full enough. Once that pile is mature and ready to use, it's lost well over half of its volume. So that's a result, obviously, of composting, the breaking down of the plant fibers and other materials into smaller and smaller particles, so you start to lose volume. But the other thing that happens is you lose a lot of fertility as well. So you're going to lose, it's a long-term off-gassing of carbon and nitrogen from your compost. So still really effective, but incredibly important to have a passive pile in our climate, because we only have X amount of months of the year to grow food and to compost, and then we have winter. So what are you doing with your winter food scraps? You need a place to put those, and you can totally put those in a passive pile throughout the winter. Now, one strategy we use is if we're building a passive pile through the winter, we have a bale of straw handy, and whenever we put wet, soupy stuff in, we add a little bit of that carbon source. You can use wood chips as well, no problem. So we try to maintain a rough mixture of carbon and nitrogen because we're just leaving it alone. We're not worried about turning the pile. The other method that we love to use is called thermophilic composting. So that's a high heat system which can create compost in basically 2 to 3 months. So it's a big difference from 2 to 3 years. So the cool thing about thermophilic composting, and I'm not going to get into it in this video, is really that not only are you creating a compost that is nutrient dense, but is also you're multiplying soil microbial species. And so your compost then is used more as an inoculant for your garden soil. So it's absolutely wonderful. You also don't build a thermophilic pile piece by piece. It all happens on the same day, like baking a cake. You have all of your ingredients in the right composition of carbon to nitrogen, depending on the kind of compost you want to build, and you can create a designer compost for yourself. So composting is an incredibly important part of what we do here at the Urban Farm Permaculture Project, and the composting component is something that a lot of people have gotten wrong in the past. They failed, they didn't do it right, and they just feel they can't compost. So it's a hot topic, and it's wonderful to be able to demonstrate the composting process here at our project, and to show my Urban Farm School students how that works as well. So let's look at this composting bin design that we have found works the best for us. So basically we've crafted this so that it's just got this drop down plate. So initially this actually dropped completely flat, which is what you really want. It's just that the soil has built up. There's probably compost that's been spilled here over the years, and it's just kind of built up. But you can see how having this system makes it incredibly easy to get in and put inputs in and mix them, especially for thermophilic piles where you're actually turning the pile every few days for usually 3 or 4 times. So you want to be able to get in there. And also when it comes to utilizing your compost, this is a fantastic method. So we've tried the method where you put a channel in here and you just drop fence boards in, but every time you want to get in there, you've got to take those fence boards out, and it's a bit of a pain. And then wood swells and shrinks, and so we just grew tired of fighting that system. So we designed these bins that function just like this, and we just love the system. It is so simple. We just have little hook and chain here that hold everything in place. No fuss, no muss. Really, really simple. That's all we need. So our composting strategies here have been great because we always have the open bin, which is our neighbors will contribute to our bins, which is really wonderful. They know exactly what kinds of things we accept and don't accept. So we always have an open bin, and actually, if you notice here, we've got a clip on this bin. This is the sign that this is the bin to contribute to this year. So it's really great. So we've got a lot of plant debris in here. This is all just dry carboniferous material here that we'll use to make our compost mix, and we're going to be making a nice big pile soon. One of the strategies that we use for our cold climate composting is that we don't wait until fall to create our thermophilic compost. This is the perfect time right now. The challenge is we have lots of brown, lots of carbon-rich materials, but not so much nitrogen. So often what we rely on is manure, good manure from sources that we trust. I really like sheep manure, but I'm open to any kind of poop, and we'll use that primarily as our nitrogen source. Now, if we can't get enough of that, then sometimes we'll go to something like alfalfa pellets or anything that's high nitrogen to build up to get the proportions correct from carbon to nitrogen ratio. But it's a much better time for us to start our composting is sometime in June, because that means that by the fall, our compost is finished. It's a thermophilic system we're using, so it's quick. So at that time, then we can be applying compost to our beds in the fall, which is perfect. Now our beds are ready to go. In the spring, we can plant as soon as conditions are favorable. And that's one way that we deal with our very short growing season, is we try to do our bed prep as much as possible in the fall. Now, we're also mulching our beds over winter, so we're maintaining fertility levels in our soil over the winter. We're not losing a lot of nitrogen to the atmosphere or carbon to the atmosphere, in the fall and winter months. So some of those short season cold climate strategies around composting, you have to, all of your strategies have to be contextual to where you live, the climate that you live in. So hopefully this has been useful information for you. I do encourage you to check out some of our composting classes that we hold in the fall here at Urban Farm School. Of course, in the Permaculture Design Certification course, I teach the soil health component, and we always cover composting. Like I said, it's a pretty hot topic, so you can check that out on through either of those venues. So, folks, if you have any questions, do feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll catch up with you on the next video.